What's up, everybody? Brady Fugel here, coming at you with a review for the new Halo Effect album, March of the Unheard, that was released yesterday, Friday, January 10th. Former members of the legendary Swedish melodic death metal band In Flames, all coming together and making music that sounds like classic In Flames. If you are a fan of the Gothenburg melodic death metal scene and that sound in bands like Classic In Flames, At the Gates, etc., this is like a dream come true. Because let's face it, since Clayman in 2000, In Flames' discography has been somewhat of a bumpy road. I personally have still enjoyed several of the albums that they have put out in the 2000s, but regardless as to whether or not you enjoy In Flames' post-Clayman output, they are still very different from those classic albums, just purely on a stylistic level. And as a result, the Halo Effect instantly appeals to this whole group of fans that have been wanting to hear In Flames go back to that classic style. Just over 2 years ago, they put out their debut album, Days of the Lost, which very much followed in that style and was a great album, and I talked about it in my top 10 albums of 2022 video. But the fact that the Halo Effect appeals to this specific group of fans instantly gives them a bit of a leg up as far as playing that specific style from that specific time period. Because rather than sounding derivative or unoriginal, it sounds fresh and desired. And you also have to take into account that the guys in this band were very much purveyors of this specific subgenre. Most notably, Jesper Stromblad, who played with In Flames, I think up until Sounds of a Playground Fading. And given that melodic death metal is such a guitar-focused subgenre, was responsible for several of In Flames' best songwriting moments. And there's also Dark Tranquility vocalist Michael Stan doing lead vocals on here. So, seriously, the melodic death metal star power in this band really does make this a dream come true as far as a melodic death metal supergroup. As far as the actual music on this album goes, it was preceded by 3 singles, Detonate, the title track, and Cruel Perception. All of which I had a lot of praise for, especially the lead single Detonate, which is probably my favorite of the 3 singles. And kicking things off with this album is the opening track, Conspire to Deceive, which is one of my very favorite tracks on here. It starts with those very synthesized lead guitars that sound absolutely gorgeous. They instantly reminded me of Reroute to Remain and even Soundtrack to Your Escape to some degree. And when those rhythm guitars kick in and you get that main riff with, again, those synthesized leads floating over it, that is just such a awesome, epic, full-sounding collision. The verses in this song are a bit more laid back, and the song overall has a very mid-tempo feel, which is why it reminds me of those 2 In Flames albums. That main riff section comes back for the chorus with some halftime drums under it, gives it a totally different feel in a very good way. You get that awesome solo that's in that triplet feel. The song is very Reroute to Remain in the best way possible. And same goes for the lead single Detonate. I get a lot of early 2000s In Flames influence in this song with those dual guitar harmonies popping in and out of those verses, which is just a classic In Flames trope. The chorus sounds absolutely massive and has those lovely pulsating guitars floating underneath those vocals. These 2 songs back to back I think were a great pairing and a great way to start the album. They just give it such an energy boost, and the overall vibe of these songs is just so, it just sounds so alive. And it allows track 3, Our Channel to the Darkness, to kick off with that lovely, serene acoustic guitar intro. Then there's that real groovy intro riff, which is played a little bit lower on the guitar. I do especially love how this band incorporates more rhythmic-based ideas like that instead of just going for non-stop, Iron Maiden style harmonized riffing the whole time. Because if they were doing that, the album would get very stale very fast. And that's one of the reasons why In Flames was so good at this style in the 90s. But no, this song, the way it just builds energy more and more is awesome with those skank beats in the verses, those double bass drums in that pre-chorus that just feels like it's building up and ascending. And then in the chorus, you get those soaring lead guitar melodies, again, that kind of float behind the vocals a little bit. And one of my favorite musical passages on this entire album is on this song. It's right around the 2:21 mark, when you get those, again, synthesized lead guitars just playing this really just methodical but lovely sounding little solo. That section just gives me so many just waves and waves of nostalgia because it just sounds so like early 2000s. It's just gorgeous. And then it again has this effortless transition to that final chorus where those soaring guitar harmonies come back. The 3rd single, Cruel Perception, comes next. And a quick side note, let me know if you noticed this as well in the comments, but I swear when they dropped this as the 3rd single, I swear they mixed it up with Forever Astray later on in the record and then fixed it, because I remember Forever Astray was so clearly the first, that 3rd single that day it got released, And I think they just like, oh, oops, flipped it and put Cruel Perception in instead. But regardless, I mean, they're both great songs. I'm going to talk about Forever Astray later and have lots of praise for it, but this is another great song, Cruel Perception. It's definitely one of the more straight up mellow death tracks on here, although I especially do love those slinky, clean guitars in the verses. And on an instrumental level, this is one of the most melodic tracks on here, just in the overall note choices. And again, those lead guitar harmonies that carry into that chorus sound absolutely gorgeous, and the double bass gives it this huge energy boost once again. The track What We've Become is another track I love on here, and it brings up one of my favorite aspects of this record, which is when they depart from those traditional triumphant mellow death riffs and go for something a bit more moody, a bit more dark, and a bit more dramatic. That mournful opening chord progression, how it transitions into those awesome and dramatic harmonized pull-off riffs, that is just such an awesome transition, and both parts are some of my favorite chord progressions on the album. The chorus sees the rhythm guitar kind of open up a bit more and breathe, and it allows, again, those slinky, synthesized lead guitar parts to really just float in and out of the song and kind of pop in and out in contrast to the rhythm guitar part. I thought that was a very creative choice for that chorus, and the vocals the whole time feel very natural over it, and both parts work very much in sync without dominating each other. And now we arrive at what any of my followers know is the Achilles heel of any good album for me, and that is the mid-album interlude track. This Curse of Silence. Do I think it's necessary in the album? Not really. But that being said, there are still some great melodies in this track, and I can't be mad that it's there, especially when it's sandwiched in between just an overall great body of work. It also has a really great transition into the title track, which is also the second single, which is another track that very much follows in the traditional Swedish melodic death metal vein. The song, again, has a great contrast between those stopping double bass drums in the chorus that complement the triumphant guitars. That main chord progression in particular is just so, pretty. I know it's a weird word to use, but it's in great contrast with the more laid-back verses. The song Forever Astray is maybe my favorite track on the whole record. I absolutely love the chord progression in this song. They bring such that awesome element of drama, and it's the first taste of some clean vocals we get in here from Michael Stan. His clean vocals do bring that operatic element that does complement the dramatic nature of this song very well. But seriously, I listened to that intro and I just feel like I'm embarking on some big dangerous odyssey. It's crazy just how epic that intro to the song is. Whether it's those triplet based stank beats that transition flawlessly into those double bass drums that have that epic harmonized solo section over, and the actual solo later on in the song is probably my favorite solo on here. Again, just so dramatic. I love the rhythmic drums under it when it first kicks in too. And then the next track, Between Directions, is another favorite of mine, with those real dramatic string sections in the intro, and again, that really dark, dynamic main riff. You got those real bassy verses and those haunting choir vocals that pop in and out of it. Some more dramatic, moody, operatic vocals from Michael Stan here. I especially love when the band kind of stops playing and lets him to kind of shine on top of those, again, slinky, clean guitar melodies and that bridge. A Death That Becomes Us is one of the most unique tracks on here too, with that almost funk-sounding intro that carries over into the main riff. The verses have this stomping traditional metal feel that I thought was a very nice addition to the album. This might be the biggest departure from traditional melodic death metal on this album. But, I mean, it's still there. I mean, you still got those harmonized guitars that, again, just sound really serene and smooth in the chorus and in that bridge section when they're more isolated. The only track on here that I'm not really feeling is the last full track on here, The Burning Point, because it just feels a little bit like filler. That main chord progression is very similar to the one they already used on Forever Astray. It's also the last track on this album that stylistically has been pretty similar, so it is in kind of a tough spot just because of that. But it still has that bendy post-chorus riff that I think is pretty cool. And guys, overall, I have very little negative to say about this album. Literally the only criticisms I could think of are in regards to sequencing. Forever Astray and Between Directions are my two favorite tracks on here, and they both feature clean vocals, but I don't know if I would have put them back to back like that because they have similar ideas in that way. I think that would have worked better separating the other tracks that also have similar ideas. And although both instrumental tracks on here are okay, I still don't really think they're that necessary for the album. So I mean, those two little gripes and the one song, Burning Point, that I wasn't crazy about, that's really all I got for criticisms. Awesome way to start the year. If you like melodic death metal, I cannot recommend this album to you enough. This album gets a 27 out of 30 for me. As always, thank you guys very much for watching. Comment your thoughts on this album below. I'd love to hear them. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace.